Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Laura Patterson, founder and president of VisionEdge Marketing, a firm that has helped companies build customer-focused growth strategies for more than 25 years. We explore how data-driven decision-making has evolved, why curiosity is key to real customer centricity, and how leaders can balance creating value for customers and the business. Laura also shares her perspective on AI's role in marketing and the lessons she's learned about adapting through change.
Hello, Laura. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi, Scott. I'm Laura Patterson, and I am the founder and president of VisionEdge Marketing, a 25-year-old growth strategy consulting firm here in Austin, Texas. What we do is we help our customers grow.
Growth strategy expert. That is very 10 years ago, not 25. You've been at this a lot longer than most people, I think, even knew it was a thing.
Yes, that is true. When we started in 1999, on the premise that one needed to have good insights from data to make better decisions, have operational excellence and good measures, and be focused, hyper-focused on strategy from a customer-centric perspective, those were like deer in the headlight words. I mean, they really were deer in the headlight words. Now, everybody uses them, but back then, it was definitely kind of a new frontier.
It kind of reminds me of it's comparison into the SAT as an example, right? If you could spell the SAT, you could get into University of Texas when I was a kid, right? And now if you need a 1500 and a 4.9 to to even get in. And I feel like it's just kind of that the world has filled in all the inefficiencies, right? And in your area of expertise, the world it took them 25 years, but a lot of those areas starting getting filled in terms of people learned how to do it, or they went to school for it, or they learned from you. And now a lot of those inefficiencies are filled up. Like, how has it changed in 25 years? Because you're right. It used to be like, oh, wait, but using data to go drive marketing is crazy. And now it's like, well, of course you use data to do that.
Yeah, a lot of things have actually evolved. And then you're bringing up a really good point about data. The amount of data today is explosive. I mean, it's like drinking from a fire hose, but the amount of the ability to actually get insights from that data, that's still a really big challenge. So people are trying to use technology to do that, but technology is only as good as you are. So if you don't know how to ask the right questions, you won't get the right insights. And it's interesting how few questions and how I wish our customers and people in general were more curious about their customers. Curiosity is really important to be customer-centric. You have to ask questions of your customers if you want to be customer-centric, rather than sort of assuming. So even though people think they're highly customer-centric today because they think they know, they assume they know. They don't typically ask. And the things they think they know sometimes are not very actionable. For example, how many times have you filled out a little survey that says, how did you feel about this transaction today on a scale of 1 to 5? 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. So let's say you get a 2-star. How actionable is that? What can you do with that? Even if you give them a little feedback, well, for whatever it was, it's not very actionable. Or how satisfied were you? So being more curious is really important to the process of being more customer-centric.
Yeah, and I feel like, my dad had a software company that was really years ago when I was a kid, and it was really male driven, right? He really only had general geographic, demographic data of humans. He kind of knew where they lived. He kind of knew almost how much money they made, but only because of the magazines they subscribed to, right? Because that's how it was done back in the day. Now it's a little bit different. Now the data is almost overwhelming. It's Zoom info. It's 50,000 places, and everybody claims to have the kind of more accurate data. No, so is your thesis that you forget all that? Let's just go ask your customer exactly what they want? Or how are you kind of doing around that, or using a little bit of both?
Yeah, you have to do a little bit of both. I mean, you can't ignore the data sources. When you have a lot of data internally, right? You have a lot, whether it's from your CRM system or your email automation system or your social media, you have a lot of data externally, from whether that's research through a trade association. Almost all of our customers are B2B, so they're members of trade associations or other networks. Lots of external data, from third-party research. So you want to be able to marry that, but you also want to ask. And then you want to, and sometimes, the goal of every business is to create customer and business value. That's the goal of every business. And to find the right balance between those two things. You can't create customer value at the expense of business value for too long, or you'll go out of business. And if you create business value at the expense of customer value, you're going to go out of business. So it's finding that right balance. And that's really one of the things that we try to help our customers do, is find that balance.
Who was so typically typically when I meet someone or interview someone about a business they've had for 25 years, the way they get into it is because they were solving a problem either for themselves that they were able to go sell to someone else, or they already knew the company that they were going to service, right? And somehow they kind of created the services around it. Like, who was your first client and how did you kind of get them?
Great question. Okay, a little bit of history. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I've been here since 1982. So in 1982, I came here to work in technology for a company that maybe some people have heard of, Motorola, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I came here to work for that company. I was already working in a technology startup company, was one of the reasons they hired me. And I was here for a while before 1999 and had begun to build a pretty good reputation. Austin was a different town back then. We were smaller. We were more networked. We were more connected. Along the way, Austin got on the map, because in 1982, we weren't on the map. Getting people to come here was hard, but a couple things happened along the way, a couple of entities. One was Semitech and the other was MCC. And those entities created a whole spark of new industry in Austin. And so in 1999, if you could spell marketing, you could get a job. And my phone began to ring from people who were looking for people to take on their marketing in their company. And that led to me thinking, oh, this might be a good time to be an entrepreneur. So I converted those first job offers into customers. And all of them were really trying to leverage my background as a operations, data science, and measurement and customer centricity. They were already kind of a key part of what people knew about me and with the work that I had done because of my career. And so I just parlayed that into VisionEdge Marketing.
Yeah, it's funny. It was the right place at the right time, right? It just feels like because if there was like 1,000 people with masters in marketing, you would have had a hard time at the time, right? And then you ended up elevating yourself by learning almost on the job a little bit, right? And then you realize you're like, I'm pretty good at this. I have a background in the things I need that maybe no one even understands, which is data science, which is all the things that now, which is quite, kind of a lot of marketing has that already, right? Okay, so you're rolling around, you've got your first 2 clients, right? You're paying the bill. Like, oh my God, I'm paying the bills. Look at me, right? You're like, okay, well, I should probably go get an LLC, or back then it was like a C Corp only, and then an S Corp, and then the LLC S Corp, right? Okay, I should probably go do this. I'll get to go get a bank account, right? It's really all the things you do when you start a company, right? At this point in time, is it just you?
No, we have people, but things happen in the world, and I know you can relate to this. So 2001, we are just blowing and going, and it's all awesome, right? But then 9/11 happens, and the dot-com bust happens, and one of the primary people, almost like essentially a co-founder, his wife gets a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And so we're trying to scramble. Customers are going out of business. The world is upside down. He's upside down. So he basically says to me, "You're kind of on your own, kid." He was quite a bit older than me. And he said, if you want to carry on, but I've got to go find better health insurance. Right. And so I just basically thought, well, everything's imploding. If it's going to implode, there's no point in trying to just hang it up. So instead, we were one of the first ones to actually go remote into a company. We got rid of our offices.
What year is this?
2001.
God, you were very ahead. As it turns out, we could always work from home, right?
Well,
It was like I mean, I've worked at Fortune 500s all over the place. Like, no, you can never work from home. That's not a thing. The data's too valuable for it to be, in remote hands. And
absolutely.
it sounds like
I have some thoughts about that, Scott, and we can come back to that. We were very fortunate. Almost everyone in our company is a very seasoned veteran, right? Even though marketing is in our name, we are really analysts and strategists. And most of our work, when we work with a customer, is typically at the customer site. So therefore, we started thinking about how much money an office consumes. It's like a cookie monster, right? And we wanted to survive, and we wanted to thrive, and we wanted to serve. Those were three things that we talked about in our group, in our little group, our little what we call the Dirty Dozen. We wanted to survive, thrive, and serve. And having an office wasn't necessary to being able to achieve those things. So we jettisoned the office and all the things that went with it, and the expense that went with it, and began the journey to remote. Now, back then, there weren't anywhere near the capabilities of doing that as we have today. And we would still have, and still do have, regular get togethers in person, right? But then when COVID came, the whole world turned upside down again, right? And so our team actually got very distributed. Instead of being all in Austin, it's one thing to be all in Austin working remotely. It's another thing to
right.
have people spread all over the country working remotely. And that is a lot more challenging.
Yeah, but the thing is, we were all kind of learning together, and you had a leg up, right? Because you were already remote, you just but geographically centered, right? And then you realize, oh well, we could use geographic arbitrage, and now we can go get really smart people all over the world or the United States, and here we are, right?
Yes.
COVID made that go from this kind of adoption to this kind of adoption. They're like parabolic,
I used to be asked all the time, what's your address? I never get asked anymore, what's my address?
Right,
Right?
right.
So I think the world has come to accept the fact that people are not necessarily in a traditional office environment. Even though we do have them and access to them when we need them on a day-to-day basis, that's not what we're doing. And our
So
customers don't care. They don't care. They want quality work.
exactly.
They
And
want quality
honestly, that
work.
office is an albatross. Burning that money for an office is it's not helpful. It's literally just a drag on your balance sheet, if anything else.
Offices take a lot more than just rent. There's a lot more going on to the cost of an office when we started going through the process. But like I said, the other challenge is we never turn off. So we have to learn, because when you're working from a remote environment and your customers are all over the world, you're on all the time. And so that's a different kind of challenge for any entrepreneur or a team member who is working remotely. Is your employees are on, you're on, your customers are on. And if you do want to serve, you find yourself maybe serving 24/7. So trying to figure out how to manage that. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh yeah. So okay, so can you give me an example of your perfect client? And then I want to work our way back of how you onboard that client and kind of how that all comes to be. So what would be, you're like, what, in the entire world, if I could dream a client up, what would they look like? What would they be? Size wise, employee wise, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. We have some perfect clients. So aren't they all? But they would be at least a mid-market or larger company. So we work with very large enterprises, typically not at the high corporate level, but within a business unit, typically, if it's a really large company. It would be a member of the C-suite. Typically, it's the CEO that we are working with, or the chief strategy officer, or the chief growth officer. Those would be titles inside an organization. They are typically B2B. They are typically manufacturing or technology or logistics or life science customers, because those kinds of companies have complex products that require a different kind of buying journey from their customers. And they have to be very aware of the customer buying journey and the value proposition, because it's a much more complicated consultative type of sell and marketing. And therefore, the strategies have to be different than you are when you go through the checkout line and decide you want to buy, or do you want to buy that chocolate bar, right? And you're going right. I don't know if you've ever seen that in the grocery store, but you go by and you're like, oh, that does look kind of tempting. Do I want to spend $5 on that chocolate bar? You didn't like it it's $5, but you can't really do that when you're betting your company on a particular technology or a solution.
What's interesting though is that you've just described your service as well, because what you're selling is complex, right? And sometimes you've got to train up your client on the complexities of what you're offering, right? Okay, so now we understand it. It's probably a multi-step journey for a buying experience for that customer's customers, right? It's probably B2B as well. I'm assuming broad strokewise. And now how are you becoming into getting into their sphere of understanding? Like how do they learn about you?
They learn about us through our own marketing, through our referrals. We're very blessed to have, we have like 40 something case studies on our website. We have 80 something customer names on our website. That's not all of our customers. We've served hundreds of customers, but people are willing to be good references. They're willing to refer. They're willing to make introductions. They come back. We often have a lot of repeat business. They find us through speaking engagements, which I enjoy doing. We work with a variety of different organizations where we can bring content and programs to them. So all of that gives us exposure, and we have a good reputation. When you've been around 25 years, your reputation gets pretty well established. And I know you know a lot about branding and a lot about personal branding. And I'm a key part of the personal brand of VisionEdge Marketing. Looking back, if that wasn't the plan, but that has become the truth. And so leveraging that personal brand, that expertise, that experience in the marketplace for new business. But we do onboard our customers. We have a whole process around that. We try to drink our own champagne, so to speak. We try to tell our customers that they need good processes. So we try to make sure we have good processes. We try to work from data. We try to make sure we have our performance measures in place that are customer-centric. We don't always drink our champagne as well as we want our customers to, but we do try to do the same things we ask them to do.
Yeah, I was looking at your news section on VisionEdge, right? And it literally is hundreds
Yes.
and hundreds of links. And I haven't even got to the bottom. Okay, here, let's go all the way to the bottom. It goes all the way back to 2000. Oh my God, 1999. And it's a real dedication, right, to yourself, but to your company, but also making sure the world knows what you're doing too, right? And it's that visibility kind of gives other organizations like, oh, I guess that does sound like me a little bit or whatever, right? So someone that comes into your sphere of influence, whether it's through your bazillion appearances on the media, right? And now are you doing this through some type of prototyping, or are you like, well, we should probably talk? Because I imagine a sale like yours takes months sometimes.
It depends, right? I'm going to say it depends. So the first question I always ask somebody is, what is it you're trying to achieve? And what would success look like when you achieve it? Because what does that look like? What brought you to this conversation? Sometimes they'll come and they'll say, I want to do A, B, and C. And they'll know what
Right.
they want. And I'll say, okay, great. And the reason you want to do that is, right? I want to be clear. What is the expectation? What do they think it's going to do for them? And what other options, I might say, what other options have you explored? What other ideas did you have? Again, back to being curious, asking questions. Don't just automatically assume an answer. So try to ask good questions. When I am talking with our customers or talking in a speaking engagement, I often will say to the people in the room, do you know what success is for your customers? Raise your hand if you unequivocally know what success is for your customers, right? And it's not 100% of those people raising their hand. Unequivocally know what success is for your customers. And then second, do you know what it is they value and what it is they value from you? So these are just three kind of key questions. And a lot of times, if you don't know the answer to those, it's kind of hard to get moving forward. Well, that's for us too. We try to ask those very same questions when we're onboarding or working with a prospect.
Yeah, we do something called an ideation call, right? Where we literally try to give value and add value the first handful of times that we meet, and then try to give them something back almost for free that's exceedingly valuable, right? And I find that services like ours, we're in a similar, different but similar type of journey too, customer journey, I think. And that there's a point where customers are like, I need help. right?
Yes.
And that CMO might look at you as your company as the enemy, right? You're an outside influence coming in to sell your services or an example, and you've got to train that up. And there's all these interpersonal relationships in the C-suite of how marketing looks at the president looks at the CEO, and understanding all of that is kind of on you, right? As that service provider, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, do you have how do you handle those complexities?
Well,
Right, because
first of
you're
all,
kind of an outsider, right? And you're trying to like almost enforce your will a little bit into the world.
so we too use the concept of a one good idea meeting. We promise that if you come have a conversation for free, you get one good idea, out of that conversation. So similar to thinking to what you do, there is complexity. We see chief marketing officers reach out to us predominantly when they are trying to figure out how to measure the value of marketing. And that is an area where I have been very passionate. I've kind of considered one of the pioneers of marketing performance management. Not performance management, that's been an industry around a long time, but really how to measure marketing. And again, back in 1999, there was an excellent article written by Christine Moorman and some folks on measuring marketing. And it really resonated with me around the work I had already been doing in my corporate career. And that actually led to the beginnings of the work we do around marketing performance management, MPM. And so CMOs are under tremendous pressure, right? They're given money to invest on behalf of the company, and then they are asked, "What did you get us for that investment?" And so we have to be able to talk about what that will be, because marketing, whether it's with a capital M on the upstream front, which is where we spend our time, or at the little m on the downstream front, where so many people spend their time, we don't do that work. They tend to get into measures that are not very meaningful to the leadership team. So getting the right measures is very important to them. And so if they can find a colleague or a collaborator or a partner to help them do that and be more successful, we don't typically run into too much of a challenge in that conversation, because they know they need help and they want help. They just don't always know what they need to do. But it's a big undertaking, and that's oftentimes the most daunting task.
Yeah, the biggest problem in your industry, I'm going to take a guess here, is attribution. How the hell do you know that this marketing that my company did actually drove sales or drove conversations that ended up in more revenue? It is so difficult, and it has been the bane of our existence in the world of kind of marketing for a while. Is that true? Is that accurate or no? Attribution.
Yes and no. So I'll plant the seed. We do not market to buckets of revenue, right? We don't. We market to segments of customers. And we need to make sure that our measures are tied to what it is we market to and what it is we produce. And we produce either new customers or we produce more business from existing customers. That's what we do. And so we need to think about how we can put our measures not so much around where the attribution came from, but rather what did we actually produce? What would we expect it to produce? And then we can determine which things helped us do that best. But most marketing people have yet to be able to crack the code on being able to demonstrate what they produce. If you get too stuck on where did it come from, you're really talking about what drove conversations or what drove leads or whatever words you want to use. But in the end, the leadership team is expecting marketing to create customer value, find, keep, grow the value of customers. We need to tie our measures to those kinds of outcomes.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that because you're going to a particular segment, right? And if it's brand new, let's just pretend just brand new business,
Mhm.
it's quite easier, right? 'Cause you're like, well, we've added this SIC code categorization as an example as new customers, or we've added small, medium businesses as customers, and whether you're after that or not, attribution becomes quite easy when you're only going after a particular segment, and then value and all the things that kind of that the CEO may be looking for something different than the CMO is looking for, obviously, right? The CEO is like bottom line money. CMO is like, no, we grew in this area. We grew in that area, right? Can you kind of talk about that just a little bit more?
Okay. All right, Scott, we're getting into a little different direction, but that's all right. This is fun. Whether you're a startup or a larger and more established organization, revenue comes from customers. That's where it comes from. So when I'm working with a member of the C-suite and they tell me, and I ask them, let's say a CEO, what does success look like for you at the end of the coming year? And I might get a revenue number. It looks like X number of dollars in revenue, X amount of profit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm great, wonderful. Now, can you please tell me what percentage of that revenue is going to come from your current customers? Which ones? And what is it they're going to buy and why? And what percentage of that revenue is going to come from new customers? Which ones, what segments, and what are they going to buy and why, right? Now, that armed with that information, imagine what the product group or the R&D group or the implementation group or the sales group or the marketing group could do if they knew the answers to those questions.
And
right?
they would, and they would also be different in that they realized where the real money was coming from. And when I say real money, I mean, well, if we're selling this product to this type of group of people, well, that may change R&D. Completely change
Exactly.
R&D, right?
No,
Especially
totally.
if they didn't even know that would exist. Especially if they didn't really understand what they were, creating to begin with.
Right. So this whole question isn't about marketing. It's about your business. And then we can talk about your strategies. But now you have your entire team is locked in on what it is, what is success, right? So now we can start talking about, well, is that realistic that you think X number of new customers, or you're going to acquire X number of new customers? Let's say it's a segment you've never even been in. And is how highly competitive is that segment? It's very competitive, or there's no competition. All that's going to affect that number. So now you can have a real conversation about the number, not the revenue, the number, right? And then you can begin to have some other conversations about, well, how long a sale is that? How will that affect pricing? Are there things externally that might affect pricing? How will that affect your revenue number? Now we're having those kinds of conversations, all of which will ripple out into the rest of the conversation. Might even ripple out with, wow, we're going into this new segment and we've never been in that segment before. Do we have anybody in the organization with experience in that segment? If we don't have anyone in the organization with experience in that segment, should we be looking for that, or should we partner for that, right? All of that kind of, it sets up questions around strategy. So it's not just marketing, it's really how you're going to grow your company.
Very interesting.
I can see the wheels turning in your head. I'm not sure what that means, but I can see that.
It's funny. I mean, I've been in the engineering world for 30 years, right? And in the engineering world, there's a joke. It's a cartoon that was on. I had a boss named Mike Helmick at Kennedy Space Center at NASA, right? And on the wall, there was a guy like on a computer, and then he was like, "Hey, go find out what they need. I'll begin programming." Right? They've already begun doing all the work, even though they really haven't figured out what it is that you're doing, right? And I figure it's the ready, fire, aim problem of a lot of businesses. Is they think there's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of wink, wink, nod, nod, but they don't really know sometimes. And a lot of it, you're like, well, the thing that made us very successful 5 years ago doesn't work anymore. Right. And they haven't really had that realization yet because they haven't had that hard conversation that you're talking about right now.
Yes.
It's very interesting in that I don't think a lot of businesses, the wind is still going in that direction, but it's slowly veering off a bit, and they're still tactically going south when they should be going west. And then they're out of business in 5 years and it was too late to even change course. But
that's one of the
the
reasons
nautical stuff for this moment. But
and that's one of the reasons we encourage a lot of customers to have customer advisory boards, right? Or to have quarterly business reviews, or to tier their customers. We have one of the things we recommend is tier your customers, and then look at your leadership team, your staff, which based on your tier 1 and tier 2 customers, who's your staff partner for that customer? Not your sales partner, not your sales account person, but your actual executive partner. If that's a really valuable customer, how frequently should that person be having a conversation with that customer to really find out what's going on? So one of the things I love about what I had person I worked for at Motorola, 11 of my 14 years, was remarkable. And I count him among one of my most important mentors. And one of the things he paid attention to was cardboard boxes. I know this sounds weird, but he paid attention to cardboard boxes, because if cardboard box manufacturing was going down, the stuff that we sold into was going down, right? So what is it you should be looking at in terms of data? This goes back to data. What is an indicator of what's happening in your industry? You might not know, but your customers can start giving you some insight. And that's where boards and QBRs can be really helpful.
A client named Bob Seiden, and Bob Seiden has told this same exact thing that you just said about a week and a half ago. He said that corrugated cardboard boxes is the number one indicator that he's found that really predict downturns and slowdowns, and even more now than it was back when Motorola was around, because everything is built on delivery, right? Since COVID, right? So as that corrugated boxes, there's 5 or 10 companies, the P&Ls of those corrugated box companies, you can literally predict up to a quarter ahead of time based on their capital expenditures. They're getting ready, or they're going up or they're going down. It's just, what are the odds that you just mentioned the very thing that I was talking about that last week and this morning, in terms of kind of market prediction. So okay, so a real quick turn here. AI is kind of oppressively on top, overlaying everything right now. What is your thoughts of where this is a year from now in terms of your industry, your customers' industry? Where are we headed? And how do you think things are going to change?
Okay, so I'm sure you're having the same experience. You can't go to the gas station or the grocery store without a conversation about AI. So I was thinking we were going to have this conversation. I was probably one of the first people that had a ChatGPT account. I've been around machine learning and AI a very long time, because it's not a new thing. But the generative AI that we are all interfacing with is a relatively new thing. It's like bringing the web to the masses, or the internet to the masses, when people were sending email way back when, right? But then everybody could send email, and people had access to the internet, but now everyone has access to the internet. And that's what's going on with AI. And that also means that we have to understand it's a tool. And the tool is only as good as what we can do with it. So we're going to have to up our game. Right now, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just use the tool. It'll write my content for me. Or I'll just use the tool and it'll make my video for me. Or I'll just use the tool and it'll make my script for me, for whatever I'm going to do. The key to any tool, to be successful with any tool, is to have clarity around why you are using it and what it is you're trying to do. And are you good enough to create it manually, so that if you automate it with a tool, it will be as good or better than what you could have done manually? Does that make sense? So if you're
Does.
not, if you don't know, if you can't even, you don't understand the basic structure of writing, you're not going to know whether what you're getting from the tool is any good, because you don't understand the basic structure of writing. It's like, I don't understand the basic structure of process mapping or what goes into a particular process. And now you ask the tool to create a process map. How will you even know that that process map is a good, viable process map if you've never mapped a process and you don't understand what that process entails? So I think, in answer to your question, we're in very nascent stages of learning how to leverage this tool. We're going to all get better at it, and it's not going away. It's going to be here, and it's going to become and more integrated into everything we do.
I don't know the exact translation, but it's like a 2,000-year-old proverbish, and it goes along the lines of, the master's tools in the hands of an amateur will produce nothing of value. So it doesn't matter how credible you are with your samurai sword, but in the tool in the hands of an amateur, if there's no value, right? And I believe
Exactly.
that's probably AI is just gonna pump it out, garbage and garbage and garbage and garbage and garbage, because the people using it don't know they don't really know what good looks like or quality looks like. So it all looks like quality, right?
Yes,
And that's
we're
the
going to have
problem.
we're going to have some help, and we're going to have some help from our friends at Google. And I know you know Google far better than I do. And Google is going to help us, because Google is going to decide in their algorithm what is going to be quality. So that we can pump out all we want, but in the end, the Google algorithm will say, that was not good quality. I can tell that was junk written by an AI, by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and we're going to ding that content. So we are going to get help from Google to make sure we are not amateurs at the work we do. I know a lot of people are concerned that it's going to replace writers, editors, SEO experts, graphic designers, people like that. I know there's a lot of concern about that. I think that we're away from being replaced, but I think that every single person in those professions needs to understand how to use the tools to their advantage. If they're proficient at what they do, the tools should help them do even more and better and faster.
That's an excellent answer. So, Laura, last question. And I've asked everybody from General Petraeus, director of the CIA, this question. I have asked NFL players this question. I have asked CEOs, entrepreneurs, CEO of Disney this question. And it goes something like this. So first of all, preface, my son's 17. He has no idea what he's going to do. And I don't know what any of these kids are going to do. Will there even be jobs in the way we understand jobs in 10 years? You're 17 right now. You start over. What do you do? What do you advise your 17-year-old self to do?
Wow. I love that question. So let's see. I probably would taken one of my mentor's advice and gone and got my degrees in medical technology. I probably would have gone and gotten my degree in medical technology because that is a cool space. But when I was back in that period of time, I was thinking, all we have are x-rays. Why would I get a degree in medical technology? But look at what medical technology. But that is not the advice I would give your son. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. I think that there are periods of time where industries are huge waves. And if you can join that industry early in your career, it's monumental. I was really fortunate. I didn't even know I was joining a wave when I joined Motorola microcontroller business, that I was in the beginning of a huge technological wave in the semiconductor industry. Okay, not that semiconductors were new, but microcontrollers were, and it was a huge wave, and I had absolutely no idea that I had joined that. We are in that place in AI. Imagine if we were 10 years ago and we were in that place with cloud computing, or even 10 years earlier than that, right? There's a wave. I would get a job. I'd go and figure out what I need to have to get jobs inside AI companies and ride that wave for the next, 15, 20 years.
Some answer. Laura, thank you for doing this. This was excellent. I really enjoyed
My
our
pleasure.
conversation.
I hope your son comes up with a good plan.
Me too. Thank you.